Yeah, since again some of the colleagues have joined newly, I just want to give a 30 seconds overview. What is that we want to do? Why templating language is important here. So yeah, this is what we want to do in our DICOM and FHIR track. Hope you are able to see the screen, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So in this, our idea is we will send the images to AI algorithm, and AI algorithm generate the DICOM SR, and DICOM SR and images are available in back server. We want to have a component, a small component, which basically gets these images and DICOM SR in JSON format. DICOM web interfaces will allow you to fetch the entities in JSON format, and then convert those JSON DICOM web objects to FHIR objects, which is also JSON. So we have input JSON, which is DICOM web interfaces, and then we have output, which is in the FHIR actually. So if you go with the templating language, it's all about mapping DICOM web output to observation or imaging study, whatever we want to convert. Then anybody can use any different technologies to basically map them. So we are giving a session on Scriban today, which is more .NET specific, but concepts would remain same actually. How do you, what are the templating language? Why would you use it? And then how do you generally do a mapping from one input structure to another output structure? And what are the aspects you have to consider? Scriban is very powerful language, which is kind of coupled with .NET. We will understand those internal aspects, and then we will do a small example of converting one of these DICOM result into, for example, observation resource. Maybe small elements will try to address it so that it is helpful. And in our Connectathon track, we will do more mappings, especially for imaging study and observation in detail. And those mappings, we will use it to generate these resources, which can be used by uh, referring physician at later point of time in the form of FHIR resources. Hope the context is clear to everybody. Let's, any questions before I hand over to Shlok? If not, Shlok, please,
I just
yeah,
want to make
Vinu.
just a suggestion that some of us are like very new to DICOM, probably few
Yeah,
hours, few days old. Just briefly explaining how the JSON looks in the DICOM SR, like you showed the Postman yesterday, and then
yeah,
taking the template. Yeah, little help.
okay. Yeah, maybe I can do that. Just give me a second. Um, One more thing while we are doing this, in the examples which we are going to cover, we will also cover uh, a live example on this DICOM web and try to do it. So as I requested yesterday, if you have access to your laptop, you can actually live do those things as well. But before that, let me go this, go DICOM web examples. I'm sharing the screen back. I'll open a JSON viewer. So if you just see how the DICOM web response look actually, so this is one of the SR response which I have put it here. So if you just see on the DICOM file, it looks like this. Okay, I'm putting it on the other side. So on the DICOM file, it will be each will be having a tag and the corresponding description, and then what is value representation, what is value multiplicity, and the exact value. All these details are there in this DICOM file. Now, the same thing when you get the response from DICOM web, it would look like this. So each entity here, it would map to a DICOM tag directly on the JSON element, and then it will have a value string, sorry, value. And this value has two parts. One is value representation. In this case, for example, string. This is the one which is mapping here. If you can just see it. So it says string. This is the string part, and the exact value is here. So every other field will be like this. But you also have sequences. So if you just see this, the core content is there in a content sequence actually. So if you just go to this content sequence, you have sequence items, and each sequence item has again sequences, and each sequence has sequence item. So it goes on actually till we get the values. So that you can see it here. For example, mm, which is this? E00D. Okay, E00D. Didn't I get this here? Maybe I think this is image one, not the SR one. I'll take sequence. Oh, yeah, this is good enough. So you can map it to this. So if you just go inside, um, sorry, I took the wrong sequence. That's the reason it did not map. So 40 is 730 is the one which is mapping. So if you just go inside this, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sequence items. Yeah, I think it's not matching. Please excuse me, but you can see the map, the elements actually. That would be more than sufficient. See, if you see that you have a sequence, the type is marked as a sequence, and then each entity here are sequence items. So this tag has so many sequence item. Inside this sequence item, you will have again attributes, and each attribute has similar thing what you saw on the other side, where you have um, a string and then value. There could be some other data type that also will be there. And again, if there is a sequence inside that, it will again follow up with same thing. It goes sequence this at the top level. There is a sequence which has 5 sequence item, and each if when I went through one sequence item, it has um, attributes actually, four attributes. When I went inside one of the attribute, it has again sequence, and inside that sequence you have again attributes, and this will give you values actually. And it could also happen that there is a sequence item inside this as well, but this format is standard as per TID 1500. That is what we are going to use. For example, if you want to use let's say one of the values here, the values could be yeah, the values who generated this SR. So if you just see here at this lung lesion part, this information, we are going to get it using this JSON path and Scriban template. You traverse this entire hierarchy, get this value, and put this one as a placeholder in our template and start using it. Is that clear?
Yeah,
Any
wonderful.
questions? Yeah. Okay. Then I think let's jump to Shlok. Shlok, you can share your screen.
Yes, sir. Let me know when it is visible.
It is visible? Yeah, you go ahead with your session. Thanks.
Okay. So it's a hands-on Scriban session. So basically, what is Scriban? It's a template scripting language which is primarily used for text templating. So according to their official documentation statement, it says that it's a fast, powerful, safe, and lightweight scripting language and engine for .NET, and it was primarily developed for text templating, but at the same time it also supports passing of liquid templates. So liquid templates is basically a kind of web template, a kind of HTML. So liquid was developed by Shopify. uh, so it passes the web, it helps in making dynamic web pages, but as of now our main focus is into text templating. So the first question comes is like, why do we need a separate templating language for making these file resources? So like every programming languages supports some placeholders. Like in C, we have printf, and we can provide some value here in place of percentages or percentage %t, or we have string dot format. Every programming language supports this. But having a special templating language, we can have a code at a like a clean code. So we have a templating thing, a document separate and a code part separate. So for it is also used for like website generation, as I said, email templating. So let's say we have a use case where we have a dicom file, a more targeted use case for us. So we have a dicom file, and using that dicom file we are getting a json string of that dicom file, and now our task is to make 5 resources out of it. So what we can do here is we can like just pass this json string to our template, our 5 resource template, and make a separate template. And using that json string we can like destructure all the objects in that template and replace it with the placeholder. So our code part would be totally separate, and our template would be totally separate. So for that, a scripting language or a templating language would be a great thing to have. So here we are discussing about Scriban. So what about Scriban? It is a very simple and has a very lean syntax, and it can be easily integrated into some another text format, or also it could be a language like a JSON file or a TXT file. So on that, it's great. Some of the features that we have in this templating languages, like we can replace some values by destructuring the json string. We can also have some for loops, if else conditions. We can have some expressions to basically we can perform different kinds of logics inside the template itself rather than in the code. So we can define some function calls as well, make some functions. We can destructure some complex objects as well, which we'll be seeing in the coming examples. One more thing which is little different than other templating languages is that it also supports a multi-line statement. So just by providing this mustache pattern, we can like this two curly braces and ending with two curly braces, we can like multiple statements here, the logic part, and uh, replace it with our JSON string, whatever is needed inside the template. So, as in the definition, it says that it's a very fast and powerful thing. So, in their documentation, they have given a justification for this as well. So, they have ran a sample code for a similar template for different templating languages. So, this dark blue one is of Scriban. So this is the parsing time and parsing memory used. So we can compare that the parsing time for Scriban is quite low as compared to other templating languages. And similarly, the memory used for parsing is quite low as compared to other languages. So in this way, as they said, it is very fast while passing. It justifies this graph. And similarly, the rendering time and rendering memory used is also very much comparable in the best case scenarios. Like it is like very close to the best fluid thing. And similarly the memory is also like it does it quite well. So it justifies the statement. So the main objective of this session is to, or a main objective for a connectathon is to like make 5 resources. It can be an observation resource or an imaging study resource from a dicom file. So in the earlier session, what we saw is that using a DICOM file, we were able to convert it into a JSON string using the Orthang and the DICOM web tool. So now we have a JSON string available with us. So once we have a JSON string, and if we are using Scriban template for making our FHIR templates, we first need to convert it into a script object. So what is script object? Script object is basically another form of object which like it combines quite well with Scriban. So it has a special object inside Scriban, which is a script object. And when we pass the script object to a Scriban template, we can perform all the logic part in the template then. So as Anand also mentioned that we can use the attribute tags for destructuring various values from the script object into a template. We will be seeing it inside the example, and also use different built-in functionalities of Scriban. So we can go to their official documentation first. So this is the definition that they're given, which we saw. So coming to the first example, a very simple example. So where is a keyword for defining variable in C#. So they have defined a template as a variable and use this thing template.parse. So parse is basically a kind of starting point for defining a template. So anything written inside this is a template. So we have here hello, and this is the mustache pattern, and we have name inside it. So this is kind of a placeholder for our objects. It will get mapped to this name. It will search for this name thing. So passing part is done. We have passed this template, and now in the second line we are rendering this template. So this template, using this template, we are using template.render, and we have passed a new object here. So you can see here name equal to world is passed. So here n is capital and here is small. So it is actually a case insensitive thing. So it will still catch this thing even if it is small n or capital N. It will map world to this. So an output here is given of hello world. So here name is replaced with name. So hello world is the output here. So this was a very basic example of the syntax. So parse and render, these are the two things. First for passing the template, then rendering it by passing some object or any key value pairs. So now we can go to one of the online demo tool. I think if you have your laptops, I can share this URL so you can also like take a look at it on the go. So I will just paste it in the chat if anyone wants to. Not sure how can I access the chat. Okay. Like is it visible in the chat? If anyone can confirm, I'm not sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I will just give an overview of this demo, online demo tool, which has been made by one of the developers. So what it does that it has this input object. So this kind of acts like an input of what we had passed here, kind of an object. And this is a Scriban template, which we can define. We can change this as well. And so it performs everything like the parsing and rendering thing in the back of the browser. And the output is comes here. So I will just paste this object in one of the JSON viewers so it is easy to understand. Okay. So in this sample JSON example that they have given, the object looks something like this. So it has a key of name, address, order ID, total, and then it has a list. List contains two objects, which again contains three attributes: name, quantity, total, and similarly for the second. So this is a JSON object, and let's take a look at the template. So here the first line is dear, and then we have a placeholder, and we have a model.name. So what is model? Model is basically the name of this object, which is predefined, and we cannot change it here. So model is the name of this object. So using model.name, it will search for the name inside this object. So here we find a name. Name is like Bob Smith here. So this particular thing should be replaced with Bob Smith. So if we go here, it is Bob Smith in the output. So in this way, with the help of placeholders, we can destructure any object. This was like at level 1, very basic thing. We will go more deep into it. So your order model dot order ID. So order ID is also at level 1, which is 123455, which is replaced here. Then we have a model dot address here. Your order shall be delivered to, and address is defined here as 1 Smith Saint Smithville. And then again we have this order here, which was 123455. And then here, this is a little interesting. We have model dot total, which is 23435.34, and like there is a dollar symbol here. Okay, so this is basically a pipe function in Scriban. So what it does, it adds this particular thing, which is we can pass a function here. We can like say string dot replace or anything, and it performs that operation on the value before it. So it is what it does. It's string math dot format. C stands for currency, and it replaces it with US dollars. So dollar symbol comes here. So it is available in the JavaScript mat dot format, C for currency. We can check that out. So this is this thing. And now let's say we need to display the list of items that are present in this item array, and we want to list out what are the items that have been purchased. Okay, so for this we will have to iterate through this list. So there are 2 items, so we will have to perform a for loop here. So if we go in the template here, so it says for item in model dot items. I want to make clear that this sign, special character, what it stands for. So it is basically this character erases any white space before. So if we have it at the start of our placeholder, it would like just remove any white space, including new lines. So even if we don't have it here, it will work fine. But if needed in complex templating, we can use this thing. It's very handy. Okay, so coming to this for loop for item in model dot items. So our model dot items is a list which contains 2 objects. So this is the first object and this is the second object. So each item would stand for each object. So in the first iteration, it will like have this first object. So here we have written in the placeholder item dot quantity cross item dot name. So of the first object, item dot quantity is 1. So 1 is coming here. Then we have a cross. Then we have item dot name, which is 1 kg carrots. So 1 kg carrot comes here, and item dot total, and that similar pipe function and a formatter for currency. So item dot total is 4.99, and it comes at dollar 4.99. Similarly, when it comes to the second object, we display here quantity as 1, name as 2 liter milk, and item dot total as dollar 3.5. So this was a very basic example available right here. So this is the thing. This is how it works, the placeholder thing and the for loop. Now we can move on to more related to our DICOM thing. So I have this simple input attribute tag, and which has a value representation and value. It's just one thing, just for example. So we have an observation resource here, which contains a resource type, and it has an entry. So what our target is in this example is that we want to replace this ID with this particular UID. So that is our task. So let's go through how we can do that. So first of all, this is a model, and inside model, we will need to go to this attribute tag at first. So let's see what comes up if we try to print this attribute tag. So it is 00080018, and if we render this, so we get here in ID the key as UI, then we have value, the key as value, and value as this big thing which we want. So again, destructuring it, we want to go to the value part of this inside this object. So this value. So if we paste it here and check what comes up, so now we have this list which contains one entry. So and it is present at the 0th index as it is the only entry. So if we just add index of 0 using square bracket, it will give us exactly that value. So id is now this value which is present here. So if we go again inside model, we have an attribute tag. We can get to this attribute tag using a square like indexing with a square brackets. Inside this attribute tag, we need to go to the value part of it. So again, indexing it to the value part, and inside the value which returns a list, we will go to the 0th index, which gives us the value, exact string value, the UID of it. So this was a simple example on how we can restructure a kind of attribute tag, object of attribute tag, which doesn't contain any DICOM sequence. It's a plain object.
Look, just one thing.
Yes.
Do you have this exercise file somewhere? I mean, if you paste the JSON in Zoom, it screws it up.
Uh, uh, can I
You can
send
you
this?
can you can paste it here.
Yes.
In the chat we can paste it, right? You can also drop it here. Otherwise, I'll put it in Zulip.
I will put the input JSON here on the model and this thing as well. Like you can
Yeah,
check it out or change
yeah,
anything
please.
here. So this was the first example.
Yeah, can you
Yes.
wait for 10 seconds? Maybe,
Yes.
guys, you can also check whether you can access that.
So my general experience is that Zoom screws up the syntax.
Uh,
One second.
uh,
Maybe it doesn't do always.
It doesn't work.
No, I'm checking.
It works,
then
I think. It works.
it works. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I just checked.
It works.
Hmm.
Yeah. Also, Shlok, probably
Yes.
when you're explaining, give a 5 seconds or 10 seconds gap so that
Yes.
whoever is doing it online, they can just follow it up actually. So
Yes.
you can explain and wait for
Great.
a few seconds so that others can do the chain. Thanks.
Yes. Sure. Sure. Anand. Okay. I will send the next example before only, so like you guys can get. So this is the input JSON for the next example, and I will just remove this placeholder. Can send this as well. This is the template for the next example. Should I proceed with the next example or?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
please.
you can briefly explain what is happening in the example.
Yes, sure. So in the next input, we have an attribute tag, which is a DICOM, which is of type sequence, and it contains one sequence item, which contains 3 items. So an attribute tag which is of type sequence containing one sequence item and has 3 items inside that sequence item. So these 3 sequence items are uh, a single level which contains value representation and its value. So what we will do in this example is we will try to get one value from it. So we can take this value Siemens Healthineers or ARAT companion, and we will try to get into the sequence and get this particular value of one of the items inside the sequence item. Okay. Okay. So I have pasted the input here, and we can erase this. So you can also try it out at the same time. So
Yeah.
okay, let's start this. So first we will have the model, and at level 1 we have this particular attribute tag. So it is 0018 A001. So we will try to access this particular attribute tag, and let's see what comes out. So we can see there are like multiple things happening here, like a lot of data coming in. So it's basically whatever inside this is present, it comes out. So to narrow it down, we will get into the value part of it, as we want to get into the DICOM sequence. So if I destructure it further to the value part, we get a list of objects. So these are the 3 objects that we get here. And again, narrowing it down to index 0. So as we have only one sequence item, so this is a list of objects, and we go to the first object here, which is a DICOM sequence item. So now we come here, and inside this, let's say we want to access this particular value. So inside this, so this is the first object inside this sequence item. So we can access this by this attribute tag. So if we destructure it further, so we get this particular object here, which contains a value representation as LO and value as Siemens Healthineers. So if we want to get to Siemens Healthineers, we will have to access the value part of this particular object. So using the value part. So now we get a list which contains one entry. And if you want to get a particular entry at the 0th index, this particular entry, we will index it to 0th. So we exactly get Siemens Healthineers here. So like getting once more on it. So initially inside model, we went to this attribute tag here. Inside this attribute tag, we went to the value part of it here, and value was returning as a list of objects. So which contains only one object, a DICOM sequence item. So going to the 0th index of this, and then inside the 0th index, there are 3 objects. So destructuring it to the first object, we can do the second thing as well. I will show once more. So using this attribute tag here, and then the value of it here, and inside the value there is one entry, so using 0. So if we use this particular tag and try to get this AR at companion in place of this one, it will give us AR at companion research. So in this way we can get any of this. So here there is again this third one contains one more DICOM sequence. So if we use this, we get again a list, and we can go on further, like value of 0 and then this thing here.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Maybe I think you can ask some explicit question. Maybe guys can try it out actually.
Yes.
Explicit thing what you want them to try. You can just indicate. Let everybody try.
Okay, like we can try to get this new code one here in place of ID. So like we have come till here. You can try it out and let me know if there is any problem.
If someone is able to do it, you can either put that in the chat or just indicate in the chat that you completed some feedback for Shlok to proceed further.
I have some general questions actually, but I think once we are done with it, maybe I can ask, or whenever there is free time.
You
Regarding,
can ask.
I'll ask now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So actually, like Microsoft FHIR Converter, which is an open source project by Microsoft, right? They have done a lot of work on both HL7 V2 and CCDA2 FHIR conversion using liquid templates. So
Correct.
we've been using liquid a lot in production, and the thing is, even in liquid, there are some functions that are specific to the HL7 V2 to FHIR conversion and things like that. So we had to re-implement that in multiple languages, which also we need to support. So now my question is, Scriban being it's .NET only, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Scriban is .NET only. Okay, so it's like a superset of Liquid, or all Liquid templates also valid Scriban templates.
Yeah. You want to answer, Shlok, or should I?
You can answer on it.
Yeah, so it is based on Liquid. Scriban is also in the beginning itself their site. They say that it is they support Liquid template actually. So that's it's on top of that one. And again, Siddharth, the point here is not to any specific technology. See,
Hmm.
whatever we are just doing it, we can do it in Liquid JS itself, which Venu wanted to try it for JavaScript related stuff. So we can do it for other stuff as well. But why we chose this one for one of our examples is since we the wrapper component which we are going to do, which will get the DICOM web interfaces, use DICOM web interfaces and get that will be there in C# actually. And we can also implement in other technology. I think there will be some group who will be doing it on other technology as well. This is
Hmm.
just one technology which we want to explore. So it is not
Okay.
confined to this. And also
Right.
we the DICOM SR what we are going to parse, which is the main agenda of this topic.
Hmm.
The whole idea is to get that mapping correctly. I think this is just at the end these are reflection of the mappings actually. If we can get that mapping what is defined in IG
Hmm.
and then get that to this templates, you can convert it to any other templates as well actually. So in short, I think Liquid we should be able to do it with the
Got it.
Scriban,
Got it.
and we
So
will use
right.
Scriban. Yeah.
Right. Right. So the only specific Scriban thing is those wrapper functions that you have in C#.
Yes,
Right.
yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can also avoid those things if you want. But yeah, in general, I think it is straightforward. If you just see the template, what Shlok is explaining now,
Hmm.
this you go to the DICOM tag and value. The moment you get this hierarchy,
Hmm.
which is we put it in some Excel sheet or some mapping thing where we say that okay, the observation ID
Right.
maps to this DICOM tag and you can traverse using this hierarchy, then after that it's any template you can use it.
Got it. Got it. Got it. That's thank you. Thank you so much. Because the other thing is that the Microsoft Azure FHIR API, right? They also
Hmm.
natively support this mapping operation. So you will be able to
Hmm.
post like a DICOM web JSON, and if we are able to
Hmm.
represent it in pure Liquid template, then it will
Hmm.
work out of the box. So that's why I
Yeah.
had the question. Yeah.
Now we will try to get the pure Liquid templates itself. I mean, again, it's if you can get that, I don't see any complex queries so far in this DICOM SR. Unless we get such thing, I think we should be able to use the Liquid templates.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So, Anand, one of the question was like, is there any difference between accessing elements like using model dot operator and using a square bracket? So I tried
No,
this
no,
thing.
the templates what we are going to generate, it is adhering to Liquid templates because if there are already some Liquid templates which Siddharth mentioned in the fire converter part, which is already there. So if you are aligned to that one, it is more or less we can reuse everywhere else actually. So that was the point from Siddharth.
No, no, this question is asked in the chat.
Don't do anything specific to Scriban is what
Uh, Actually, this was
C
asked in
sharp
the,
part.
asked in the chat box, Anand. So dot
Oh,
operator
this is a
versus a
different
square.
chat. Okay, sorry.
Yes. So
Okay.
dot operator versus a square bracket. So I tried this thing before as well. Actually, dot operator gives some error because it tries to treat this as a number which it cannot access. So dot operator gives error here, and even if we try it in code, it doesn't work. So a square bracket is like what we should use for now. So yes. So were you able to get the new code one? If done, I will just do it here. I think one of the guy has done it. So 011 like of 0. So yes, in this way we can destructure it. Coming from here, going to the value of 0, then going to this particular tag, and inside its value at 0th index, we have the new code 1. So yes, we can replace it in this way. And further on, if we have another sequence. So should I proceed with the next example? If there are any questions.
So I'm getting a 500 error. Is it like something that I'm getting wrong?
Can you check your path or send me the path? I can check. You can verify your answer with this particular path or what you have missed maybe.
Yeah, let's proceed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will like copy this and send to the chat. Next example. So this is the input, and this is the template. Okay, you can copy that to your demo. Okay, so our task in this template is to this coding attribute. We want to have this coding attribute for this three particular objects. So these three objects, we want to repeat it. The value of it, we want to show it here. So we can like paste it in a diagram viewer. So we have a diagram sequence which contains, and this sequence item contains one item. So there is a sequence item which contains these three attributes. So we want the value of these three attributes to be present in the code part of the coding object. So I will go to the example. So this coding part contains a key code. We want to replace the value of this with the value in our objects. So there are three objects. So three coding would be visible. So we will use a for loop for this. So again, this special character for ignoring the white spaces. So for item in model of, so the first level is 0040 A043. And inside this, we have a value which contains a list. So inside this, we go to the value part, and this is one complete sequence item. So we go to the 0th index, and inside this, we have three objects, three different objects. So each item will correspond to the each object. So inside this, we want to replace the code part with the value of each object. So now item corresponds to this particular object here, from here to here. So inside item, I can use the item dot value. So I will just show what item represents here. So item contains this object, as I said, which contains a key of the attribute tag, and value is so this is the key, main key, and inside this there are two key value pairs. So first key is br and its value is sh, and the second key is value and its value is this list. So we want to get to the value part first. So if I go to the value part, so it gives us these two values. One is the value representation and second is the value. So now among this, I want to access the value part. So I will use dot value, which will return me this particular thing, a list of value, which contains one entry, which is 12600. So it is present at the 0th index. So I will access it using index 0. So we get this here 12600. And similarly for so this second object contains DCM and third contains AIRC research MR prostate. So as there is a loop, it will repeat this thing for 3 times. So second contains a DCM and third contains AIRC research MR prostate. So
Hi,
in this way,
Shloh. I have a
yes,
question, sorry.
yes, yes, sure.
So I just tried the same operator using the square brackets thing, I was able to make it. So how come we are able to use the dot operator over here, but in the
Okay.
previous example, we were getting.
Yes, yes. So I will try to give a simple example here. So here we are using dot operators in this example. So what happens is when we use a dot operator which contains kind of digits. So these are like digits. So it starts the digits. If I replace this with a and try to use it, it will work.
Does it also include special characters or only alphabets?
I'm not sure. I will check. I think it includes special characters as well. Yes, it includes, like, it doesn't take special characters or digits after the dot operators, because in C# we have an exception which is called data type exception. So after the dot operator, it accepts a character only. So if you go to C# exceptions, it doesn't take a digit or any special character at the start of a dot operator. It only accepts a character. So because of that, it doesn't work. Whereas if we have a here, it will work fine.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
But this means I should know my source and then I should use the template accordingly.
Yes, a square bracket would work in any of the cases. So I think going with square brackets would be a good, I think, for now.
Okay, so the question is more of like, what if I don't always know my source? So
You should be knowing the source, otherwise the mapping, if you don't know the JSON the format, you should be knowing. The exact string you don't have to know what the content it is there. The schema you should be knowing it, and I mean, in order to avoid that you end up in this error, it is always recommended to use the square bracket, is what the Shlok is saying.
mm. So are you guys aware of this? In some programming languages, it is available. It's a directive, like flatten. Like in GraphQL, it is available. So what flatten does is, like say you have a nested array, and it just flattens it and brings it at the 0th level in a sequence, and it makes parsing a lot easier. Is something like that available?
But the connections that would be important, like inside a sequence, there is an attribute. If all comes to level 1, how will we be able to identify like the mapping?
Yeah, so it's a proven methodology. So I'm not an expert on flatten. Okay. Trying it with GraphQL, I have not completely done, but so it applies to any data structure, so any array or any object. So then probably those array elements would be uniquely identifiable, and it also
I'm
kind of
not
gives
sure
you
of flattening part, but so here, if you I mean, we indirectly with the JSON path, we are flattening that itself, right? I mean, not exactly the way what you're mentioning, but we are going to the hierarchy and then getting
right.
that exact path, actually, JSON path, or
Yeah.
similar to X path kind of thing, JSON path, and then we are getting the values. I'm not sure with our
Yeah,
hierarchy. Yeah,
right. That's right. So I was just curious
yeah.
because you mentioned there will be a sequence inside an element, and then you can go to any number of.
I think it might be even complicated as well, because if you have sequence inside that sequence item and again sequence inside that, and if you flatten it out, it will be a big structure. But yeah, that's what I can only give my input actually, but I'm not really sure how it looks once you flatten.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, like, is there any question on this? Like, should I wait or should we go with next example? Okay, I will proceed with next example. I will send the input and the template. Okay, so we have an attribute tag here, which is a DICOM sequence, which contains one sequence item, and similar to the last thing, it contains three attributes. So this is first, second, and the third attribute is again a DICOM sequence, which contains one sequence item and again three attribute tags. So we will try to use a for loop and with an if condition this time. So let's see, and we will try to ignore this sequence item and only print the first two attributes here. Okay, so inside the model, let's first go to this particular tag. So inside this attribute, we will try to access the value, and inside value, which returns as a list of objects, we will first take the index 0, the first sequence item, and inside that sequence item, so we will try to access the inner sequence, or we can go with the first thing as well. Let's see. Okay, so first let's see this. So this particular thing contains three attribute tags, 0, 70, 90, and 70. So the third one is a sequence, and first two are level 1 attribute tags. So we have accessed these three attributes and an item, and we have an if condition here. So what this for dot index does is that it gets us the index of this for loop. So it starts with 0, then goes to 1, then goes to 2. So in this case we have three attributes. So indexing will be 0, 1, 2. So we have an if condition here, that if for dot index is greater than 1, we will make a break statement and end it here. Otherwise we will continue with this code. So inside the code, what we have, we are accessing the item here, its value, and the value of 0, like we did in the last example. So it will give us this results, item dot value, and inside value and accessing the 0th index. So let's check the output, what it gives. So there are three attributes, but here we are getting only two attributes, because after when the index becomes 2, it breaks here. So as 2 is greater than 1, it will break here, and it will only output two attributes. Here you can modify one thing, rather than accessing this particular thing. So I will go to the JSON here. So rather than accessing this thing, you can try checking out if you can access this sequence, these three attributes, by changing the path in the for loop. And let me know if there is any issue. I will like code it after 2 minutes. So try to access this attribute and try to print the first two of this and ignore the third with the if condition.
Maybe you can continue explaining if somebody is stuck.
Okay, so inside the third attribute, which is a sequence, we are trying to access the three attributes that are present inside this. So after this thing, we will first go on to the third attribute, which is 000. Uh, I think- yes, this one, 0040A170, and inside this we will go to the value part of it, and which is a dicom sequence atom which contains one atom, and going to the first item. And this will result, this will give us these three attributes. So out of these three attributes, we will destructure it further, and using item dot value, and inside value we will use the value and zeroth index of it. So like if I print the complete item, so it gives us this three attributes: key 00801000, then 102, and then 104. 104 is not there because if statement is breaking it. So these two things we get, and inside that we can first access the value. So we get these two values, VR and value, and we want value here, and we get a value here. So it's a list which contains new code and 991H IHE, and accessing the first index, zeroth index. So in this way, if we have a sequence inside a sequence, we can just loop it through by defining a particular address. And if conditions we can use, like we can modify this if conditions according to use cases, and make a template. Okay, so for loops are done. If conditions are done, a normal destructuring is done. Is anyone having a question, or we will go to the next part? It's a kind of exercise if you want to.
Let's go to the next one.
Okay, so I will send this input here. Okay, so what the task is, given this input, I will just so given this input, this contains two objects. One is the date and second one is the time. So date has a value 20201222, and time has this value. So a very simple task is that we need to combine this date and time into one particular string and print it out. So I will show you the output. So we want it in this particular format. So it is 20201222, and time is 085819. So if you guys want to try like writing the Scriban template for it, I can wait for some time.
In the interest of time, why don't you write it?
Okay. Okay. So date as a key, we can define a template. So first we want to access the this particular tag, value of this particular tag. So using model dot or square brackets 00080023, and now we want to combine this value with this particular value. So if we go to the documentation part, like how we can combine two strings, so we can find a plus operator here which does this thing for us. So like we can combine using a plus operator here. So add left to the, this is number thing, we can do it with the strings as well, this thing left plus right. So using a plus operator, we can combine the date and time. So I will use a plus operator here. model of so time attribute is this, and going to the value part of it and accessing the 0th index. Okay, I'm going to this value of 0. So in this way, we can like make any logic inside a template on what the output is required for us. So um, I have like tried to give some examples on destructuring, for loops, if else conditions, a small operation, and I mean in the documentation there are a lot of built-in functions that are provided here, and it's a very well documented thing. So for further, you can like go on to this documentation link of Scriban and check out the different more complex things here. So as of now, try to cover simple examples which are required for making file resources. Uh,
Thanks, Shlok. Are there any questions? Maybe what we can do is, which I think I'll post it on Zulip chat also. If you have some kind of a mapping DICOM file, I can post a DICOM SR object, and maybe on the observation you can just try to put a date or even the ID. Actually, if you can map ID, that's also fine actually. So the input file, I'll share it on Zulip, and default template I'll share, where I'll put up placeholders, but you will try to write the required mapping also I'll indicate, but I'll not give you the template syntax. That you can probably try. I'll put it in Zulip, and then you can try it out yourself. Any questions to Shlok? I think more or less we will be using for loops, if conditions, and direct mapping. No advanced things we will be using it. So that's pretty well covered by Shlok already.
Yeah, Anand, I think you can just place it in the pre-connect on the Connectathon track. That should be enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Sure, I'll place it today, and then you guys can try it out.
yeah. So
Already,
I have
I'll give that sample files already in the chat. Okay,
I have
go
some
ahead,
follow-up
Venu.
questions. So now what we have seen is an manual way, right? So we plan to automate this, right? Ideally.
Yeah. So I mean, the mapping exactly is what we are going to. I mean, we have a IG which is there, and with that one we'll generate the mapping. And what we are going to do is we will write the Scriban templates. That will still be manual actually, and the usage of Scriban templates in our application, where we will connect to DICOM web, get the response, DICOM web response attached to this template, and whatever response we get, that we push it to our FHIR server. That would be our application, you know.
Okay, so you have something already done for the application.
No, we will do it during Connectathon. I don't think that's a big thing, because you already have FHIR client, and this Scriban templates we will generate. Even if we generate all the this template, even if we are generating only for measurement part also, that will still generate a lot of observation, which we can post it actually. As I said, if we have more teams, more smaller groups, we will distribute into one measurement group, one planar ROI, one this while this what is Violet, I think, that you can give a separate task for each of the teams, and they can come up with their Scriban templates, and they can publish their observations to FHIR.
Okay. And then I think observation is part. I mean, for this track, the plan is to put the observation inside of the image study, right?
No, no. Observation itself is a file resource which we are
Yeah,
posting.
yeah, yeah.
Image imaging study is one additional example which we will do it, because
Yeah.
we will be having diagram images. With that images, we will try imaging study. Uh, that's something we will do it. Again, in this track depends on number of people actually. The more we have, we can try this. In parallel, so that we will everybody will get the experience. At the same time, more work can be done. So in the priority, I have put imaging study as a last priority,
Mhm.
measurement as a first, DICOM SR measurements, because that is what will complete that AI workflow. Images, even if you are not creating imaging study, it would still be fine. But anyway, we will see. I think at least 20 people are around in the connectathon. We have 4 teams, then definitely we'll be able to achieve all the topics within 1.5 days.
Yeah, so you're the star of the Connectathon, so I think you will get maximum attention. Uh,
I am not too sure of our track, but I'm one thing I can guarantee: we will have a lot of learnings in this. Together, we will learn a lot. Uh,
yeah,
we are happy to
yeah,
contribute in
so
whatever way.
question is, do we need to create templates for imaging study also, or it's just like pushing all the observations into it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
imaging study is, I mean, template is very straightforward. There's actually it directly maps to the DICOM observation. The only one tricky part there, Venu, is that DICOM images are at individual images level. What we need to do is, for imaging study to work, we need to have a DICOM web API which is at the study level actually, so that with the JSON file what we get, no, that is complete study itself. Then we can map it. There also you have to use a. Maybe I can just quickly share my screen. You see my screen?
Yes, Anand.
Just an example. See, if you just see imaging study is you have a resource type imaging study, and then when you are mapping to finally we are going to generate the similar thing actually. So if you just see resource type imaging study, this and all we can hard code actually. ID is something which we will map it to DICOM study instance UID. So that whatever DICOM tag corresponding to study instance UID, we'll put it here like model dot study instance UID. In this text, we will put the details like okay, what is a modality, what is the accession number, or everything is directly mapped to the individual tags actually. And then the identifier, this is the UID, again study instance UID, we put it. Status, probably we can hard code it, and subject we will hard code it. Patient ID we will hard code it. Date and time, what we saw, we will there are two tags, study date and study time. We'll convert it and we'll put it. And this is the place we are going to use the for loop. So we'll put this a series tag, and that, and then here we will put for every item within that studies series loop, iterate this, and then we come here within the series thing, iterate through and give the instances. Once we do this one, and we will put this we'll run through a diagram study, and we should be able to generate an imaging study. So as I said, we will have uh, f- uh, 3 or 4 teams where imaging study somebody can concentrate. We can actually have a kind of a dummy template already created or mapping created, which we can use it to do it. This is what I said yesterday also. We'll create that mapping upfront in the Excel sheet, which you can use it. And then we will have diagram SR part, where there are 3 parts. One is this measurement, and planar ROI and volute ROI. So we will check, maybe it is important to do the measurement part first. So if two teams, imaging study one team and measurement one team, they do it, another team will basically integrate all these things. If you are coming up with the .NET people, most of the guys are in .NET, then it's easier. We use C# to connect to Dicom Web, get that one, and FHIR client, FHIR libraries we use, which we can push it. So I would say if 20 people are there, we should be able to finish it in 1.5 days. Let's see, hopefully. I'll what I'll do is I'll create this team structures. I don't know who will be joining those teams. Probably team structure and assignments, we will keep it ready, and then we will as soon as team members join, they should be able to start pick the topics and start working.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, anything else?
I have a question to Shlok. So I was trying to get output for all the dates available in the JSON model JSON through a
Okay.
for loop. So I'm ending up seeing 500. So I have used the for item in model and the date structure. Can you please show that once, please? Or if you
Okay.
need the query, I can ping what I was trying.
Okay. You can ping in the chats. I will share my screen for the example.
Yeah.
Uh,
Using the for loop, I was just trying if I can extract all the values.
uh,
I'm not sure if I tried it rightly.
I will check.
I had used that keyword date as well. Then I removed, ending up seeing 500.
For item in model, like why we have this 2 times? I'm not sure.
You can show how it can be
Yes.
done. So yeah. But there is no
Yes, I
loop.
got it.
There's no
Yes.
loop. No, Shlok, where is the loop here? Do you have array here which you want to iterate?
Yes.
First
So
one, huh?
and is a
Okay.
keyword which should be at
Ah,
the end of for.
Yeah, I had used break and end. I just didn't paste it. Maybe.
I will check. So is this correct? Like this is the thing you want?
Yeah, I think we have both, right? So I think I mean, I think I can figure out for the next value,
Yes,
like
yes.
key value. Yeah,
Yes. I should I send this thing? If
I
you
think I
want to
should
check.
be good.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Yeah. Any questions?
Anand, I have one question. So, how many
yeah.
observations in general can you expect for one study? I'm thinking about the scale here. Probably observations will be overloaded.
Yeah, it depends on the measurements actually. And if you just go through IG, I mean, they recommend to have this observation for each of the measurement criteria actually, or each of the findings. So it can happen that generally, if I just see prostate cancer SR, you have the one which I just showed yesterday that had uh, two measurement groups, and inside that one pyrads and uh, this prostate volumes were the observations. Around 7-8 observations I could see in one SR for prostate cancer SR which were generated, whereas the lung cancer one was having more actually, even it could generate several of them.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, the observation is a normalized resource and it was meant for
Yeah.
observation is already overloaded. It's used for each and everything, right?
Correct.
Maybe
But
there is a
again, the observation is meant for explaining the findings actually, and that's the whole reason of IG recommending observation to be used in this one, because these all lesion things. See, there is also one thing which we have to see in the IG. We have to go through where some of the related things. For example, if a lesion, one lesion, if it's a diameter, length, breadth, if let's say all these things have to be put together in observation components and generate one observation, that's also one possibility. So it all depends on how IG has defined. We will follow the same thing.
yeah. So in case of DICOM, it's okay because you're having one big study and it's all a JSON structure. But when you break it down into multiple resources and keep querying the server,
Yeah.
uh,
It can have more observations actually. At least, I mean, my experience in some of the hospitals for patients, we see hundreds of observations actually.
so maybe there should be an imaging observation and that should have an array of all the, I mean, like one-to-one mapping to the.
Now, if you have a related thing, you can group it with observation components. Observation components is inside the observation, you can put the components. That's allowed.
Yeah, but like you said, like you have 7 or 8 things, right, for the lung cancer. So can I put all of them
Yeah.
in?
Then see if it's a related. See, for example, prostate volume and pyrites, you cannot put it in one observation. It does not make sense, because these are two different observations. Then you will have to create the two separate observations. Whereas lung lesion, the length, the breadth, if you want to put it in observation, you can choose two observation components and put it in one observation and save it.
Okay.
And again, the example which I gave in the second one, it depends on how IG is recommending. So far, I saw even observation components recommended there. So we will go with whatever they have recommended. But I do understand your point. If more number of observations can occur.
Yeah, and more so it's an API, so my bundle sizes will keep increasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even querying would be a challenge.
Yeah, I have seen some of our applications where observation, it takes at least it's not milliseconds, it is in terms of uh, almost 500 600 milliseconds is what it takes to get all the observations.
Yeah, I think that's why we are doing the connectathon.
Yeah, I'll put that maybe in the IG. No, we can actually, you can also directly contribute to IG where you can put that question saying that did they already consider scalability? This question we can go, it can go back to IG actually, and we can also suggest this other mechanism, what I just indicated, observation components, and put it in observation. So we can actually give that feedback. That's all about Connectathon, where we can put our thoughts across IG, because once it is finalized, then everyone has to follow the same thing.
Yeah.
We'll put that during our Connectathon, whatever findings we get it, we'll put all those things, and as a summary thing, we will put that in the chat.
Mm.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we are good to complete the topic. Thanks once again, Shlok, for detailed hands-on session with all the insights. This would definitely help everybody to get kick-started in Scriban and Liquid templates. So we will use this one during our Connectathon. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you
thank you
so
all for joining.
much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.